So good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome back to Frome for Thought, a programme of digital content from the team behind TEDxFrome 2020-2021. Who knows where we're headed next? So last week, we tackled a taboo. Holly Supker interviewed Sarah Sloan on the taboo of female sexuality. I hope some of you joined us, and if you didn't, do please catch it on YouTube. So this week, we're tackling another taboo. And joining us to share her idea worth spreading is Beth French. Beth is 26 years old and the founder of Let's Talk About Loss, a charity supporting young people aged 18 to 35 who have been bereaved. And her idea worth spreading is we need to talk about grief. So welcome, Beth.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. We need to make it okay to talk about grief. When I tell you that 5 years ago, my mum died, I need you to respond in a kind and comforting way. But sadly, what often happens is people look away or they stumble, don't know what to say. Or the worst of all, they avoid me and they just don't confront the fact that my mum died. And there's that cliche, isn't there, that people run and hide from you in the supermarket. And sadly, it's real. It's happened to me. So why can't we talk about grief? And for me, the question is, how do we dismantle those barriers and get over those fears so that we can talk about grief? A 2018 survey by Co-op Funeral Care of 30,000 people found that 24% of people don't talk about death because they don't want someone to worry. I think that's just crazy. You've just experienced a life-changing, life-shattering trauma and you're worried about upsetting or offending other people. And when Co-op Funeral Care asked their respondents what they did after they were bereaved, it was less than half of people, just 45%, that said they actually talked about the person who had died with others. And other responses were, I kept myself as busy as possible, I kept it to myself, I distracted myself, and my favourite, I got back to work as soon as I could. Only 2% of those 30,000 people said they'd actually gone for bereavement counselling. Anyway, enough of the statistics because I could quote them all night. They just blow me away. But statistics, they won't change anything. I'm really passionate about starting that conversation and ending the taboo of grief. We need to make it okay to talk about grief. It was Boxing Day in 2016, 18 months on from losing my amazing mum, Susan, and I was sat in my bed. I was missing her terribly. We just had the second Christmas without her. And I was desperate to feel less alone. I wanted to talk about my grief. I wanted to share how I was feeling, but I didn't think anyone wanted to listen and I didn't know how to talk about it. So with some encouragement from my siblings, I published a blog post and I talked about how I felt like I'd been sucked into this black hole. And to my amazement, people responded really well and they wanted me to keep writing. And I felt like it was finally okay for me to share a bit about my grief. So then in 2018, I had been writing the blog for a while. I'd made lots of lovely online grief friends, and I decided to take it one step further and start meeting up in person with people to talk about their loss. So friends came along, friends of friends, and even complete strangers. And they shared with me such personal moments of their grief. And after starting in Nottingham, those monthly meetups became the charity that I now run, Let's Talk About Loss. And I'm so proud that 5 years from that first blog post and 2 years from that first meetup, there are now over 25 meetups across the UK, and young people are meeting every month to talk about their loss. And we also explore different ways of talking about grief. We have a bereavement book club. We also have a creative writing about loss group, and we even ran an art exhibition about grief. And I know what you're thinking. It sounds like I'm obsessed with death, but I'm not. I'm obsessed with life and living life to the full and finding joy and fun and building new friendships after the pain of loss. And it's so important to laugh about loss even. Me and my siblings can laugh now about the fact that my mum, who was my best friend, I adored her, but she wasn't perfect, as no one is. She got so angry with my little brother. He'd done something truly awful. I can't remember what it was, probably hitting me or my sister or something like that. And she got so angry that she grabbed his beloved Action Man and threw him down the stairs. And I'm very sorry to inform you that Action Man did not survive the incident. He did lose a few limbs on the way. In January this year, we launched our own range of bereavement cards, and honestly, it was perfect timing. So many people have been bereaved this year, and so many of us have had to write a sympathy card. And you know how that feels when you open the sympathy card, you hold the pen up in the air and you think, oh my gosh, what do I write? Where do I start? Do I say, I'm sorry for your loss? Do I write heartfelt condolences? Or is it okay to say, I hope you're well? I received over 300 bereavement cards when my mum died. And believe me when I tell you, it is as hard to read a bereavement card as it is to write one. What you need in that moment is kindness, comfort, a funny memory, or a touching moment. What you don't need is simply regards, Graham. When we made our bereavement cards, we added an insert into each card, and they included some top tips for writing the card, and I'll share them with you now. Firstly, write something personal. Maybe share a memory of the person who died. Offer a specific way that you can help. Knowing what you need is really tricky after a trauma. If you don't know what to say, that's okay, but keep it short. A phrase like, "You're not alone in this," is really appreciated, as is just being honest about the fact that you don't know what to say, but you are thinking of them. And finally, don't worry if they don't respond. A lot has happened. Just keep checking in on them to let them know that you still care. I hope these tips feel simple and manageable. And remember that you don't need to fix their grief or cheer them up. You just need to be there with them so that their grief is a less lonely place. And don't worry about making them sad. There's nothing that you can do or say that will make them any more sad than they already are. And yeah, they might even cry. But again, don't worry about that. They won't be crying because of what you said, hopefully. They'll be crying because the pain of their loss is so raw, and actually letting them cry and just being with them and supporting them through that will show them that you're a safe space and a safe person to talk to about their loss. And finally, it's so important to continue talking about that person long after they've died. 5 years on from my mum's death, I still feel the pain of grief so intensely some days. So don't assume that that person has moved on. That's a whole other talk. But in a nutshell, they won't move on. The pain will just become more manageable. I love to talk about my mum in literally any situation. When my friends found out recently that I didn't know how to iron, I'm 26 years old, as Nicola said, I didn't know how to iron. They didn't know whether to cry or laugh or leave. the situation because I shouted across the pub, "I can't believe that my mum died without teaching me how to iron. That is so rude of her." And I laughed along. They looked horribly shocked, but it was so freeing for me to be able to join in with my friends who are moaning about their parents and just be able to keep talking about my mum. So I've got one more statistic for you, and it might shock you. 100% of us, that's every single person on the planet, will experience grief. So learning to talk about it, getting rid of this horrible stiff upper lip and embracing it in all of its ugly, beautiful, crying, laughing glory is an idea that I think is worth spreading. I think it's really important, in fact. We need to make it okay to talk about grief. Let's talk about loss.
Thank you, Beth. I really want to thank you so much from the team and I for bringing this topic tonight. I think it's so timely, as you say, you know, particularly this year. A lot of people are going through bereavement, and sadly, no doubt, many more, you know, will. So it's a really, really important topic. On a lighter note, I absolutely love the joke about the ironing, and it's so funny because I actually posted something on LinkedIn early today about how I found a way to enjoy ironing. So yes, if you ever want any ironing tips, come to me.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
So thank you so much, Beth. And all I need to say now really is to say to everybody, please do join us again next week. As Beth has been saying earlier, before we went live, you know, we've had a real variety of topics, and next week is no exception. It'll be something completely different, and we'll be interviewing Lindsay Martin about her idea worth spreading, rethinking distraction, how it could be used positively. So that could be an interesting one. So thanks again, Beth. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks.